So let us see the questions. What do you mean by colonial attitude of bureaucracy? Why it is considered dangerous in ensuring the effective functioning of bureaucracy? Discuss with relevant examples. Why this colonial attitude of bureaucracy? Because it was the Britishers who deliberately inculcated this attitude among civil servants in India. Why? Because they wanted civil servants to function on behalf of the British Empire, not for the people. And as part of this colonial attitude, they inculcated among the civil servant what is known as a master-servant relationship. Civil servants are considered to be the masters and treat people as servants. As part of this colonial attitude, again we talk about ivory tower approach. They sit on the top of the tower, completely removed from the problems and day-to-day activities of the people. The objective is to ensure that they have all the facilities so that they can only work for the British Empire. Why it is considered dangerous? Why? Because civil servant means servant of the people. When they behave like masters, they cannot serve the interests of the people. They cannot work for the welfare of people. And when they consider themselves to be masters, what is the attitude of a servant? The attitude of a servant is humility. The attitude of a servant is selflessness. The attitude of a servant is loyalty. But when you consider yourself as a master, you will become arrogant, egoistic, and unresponsive. And that is the reason why it is considered dangerous in ensuring effective functioning of democracy. And what is that solution? The solution we say is sensitivity training should be given to bureaucracy to change this colonial attitude into democratic values. That is what you have to write for this question. Next, explain the following concepts and their relevance to public services. Yes. We have talked. Yeah, we are talking about those things. The colonial attitude, as I said, that they consider themselves to be the masters. They never get into touch with the people. Ivory tower attitude, and they never are really bothered about the problems of the people. They live in complete isolation. All this is colonial attitude. Explain the following concepts and their relevance to public service. Responsiveness. What is this responsiveness? Why responsiveness? Always whenever you are writing these kind of questions, you always start with why. Why responsiveness should be there? Why? Because the objective of civil servant must be to work for the welfare of the people, to solve their problems. They should always respond to the problems of the people. When can they be responding to the problems of the people? Only when they are proactive in nature. They must be proactive. They must anticipate the problems of the people and then come out with solutions to the problems of the people. Responsiveness. And if they are not responding to the problems of people, what can it result in? It can result in what we call under administration. That is, bureaucracy not fulfilling the needs of the people, not maximizing welfare of people. Utilitarianism. Why utilitarianism? Utilitarianism should be the basic principle behind the functioning of civil servants. That is, what does utilitarianism talk about? When you talk about Jeremy Bentham, what did we say? Maximizing welfare for maximizing the maximum number of people for longest periods of time. So whenever the civil servants take any decision and implement decisions, they should do so on the basis of this concept called utilitarianism. They should take decisions that would maximize the welfare of people, because most of the time they will be facing this challenge, what kind of decisions to take, because allocation of resources, production of goods and services, distribution of output. In all these things, this maximization of welfare of maximum number of people should be the criteria, guiding principle behind civil services functioning. That is why we say utilitarianism. And then as we say that at the same time, what they must also remember is that civil servants, at the same time, they should also remember that they cannot, they must also minimize the pain of the people. For example, when you are constructing a dam, like the question that was asked last year, when you are constructing a dam, You must, there will be rehabilitation of people, and the people will be asked to move from one place to other place. You must ensure that this rehabilitation takes place with a minimum amount of pain also. Compassion. Why should civil servants have compassion? As we have said, love is the feeling, emotion that we have for those who are close to us, those who are known to us. Whereas compassion is the feeling that we have for rest of the humanity. That is what we call compassion. When I see a poor person on the street suffering from hunger, I feel his hunger. I feel for his problems. That is what is called compassion. He is not related to me, but I still definitely feel for him. That is what we call compassion, and this is very, very important for a civil servant. Why compassion is important? Because civil servant must be able to empathize with the problems of people. Then only he can provide solutions to their problems. Unless they have compassion, they can never become what you call effective civil servants. Next, innovation. What we say is that civil servants are responsible for socio-economic transformation. They are responsible for socio-economic transformation of the society. And this kind of transformation of the society is possible only when civil servants are innovative in their approach. That is what we say. The essence of development is nothing but innovation. The essence of any development is innovation. They must innovate. They must come out with new solutions to the problems. Rather than being static in their functioning, they must be innovative in their approach, in their functioning, willing to take up risks, be dynamic in their approach. That is what we say. Tolerance. Why should tolerance be an important value? Why? Because India is a society which is a completely diverse society. There is so much of diversity in terms of religion, caste, region, language, gender, race, so on and so forth. As a civil servant, they must implement rule of law. They can implement rule of law only when they have tolerance. Only when they have tolerance. They must be having respect for the diversity within the society. They must be willing to tolerate the diversity, diverse traditions, customs, religions, and everything else. On the other hand, absence of tolerance results in impatience, intolerance, which can ultimately lead to violence also. We give the example, all the communal violence incidents in the country that had taken place, it was because of intolerant behavior of our civil servants. Why? Because they were not willing to tolerate. They were always siding themselves with those people who were committing those crimes. That is the reason why. Yes. That is what, when you are writing answers to these kind of questions, you always start with why that value is important, what is that value, and example. That's it. Nothing, because word limit is there. How can you write much? You have to write in 50 words. Right? Obviously, you don't have much of space also. And if you at all you want to write, what happens with the absence of particular value? What happens with the absence of particular value? That is what we have discussed also. The most important kind of freedom is to be what you really are. You trade in your reality for a role. You give up your ability to feel, and in exchange you put a mask. Explain the above statement. These kind of statements again, UPSC is asking. Last year also, the statement about the Tamil philosopher. That kind of statements, you have to understand those kind of statements. What is it saying? Let us try to understand it. The most important kind of freedom is to be what you really are. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? This is what Amartya Sen has said, development as freedom. He defined development as freedom. And when do you call a society developed society? We call it a society developed society only when people have the complete freedom to do what they want. They must have the complete freedom to do what they want. They should not be restricted by anything else. They should not be restricted by law. They should not be restricted by traditions. They should not be restricted by customs and ethics of the society. They must have the freedom to do what they want. That is when you call a society completely developed society. Why do we talk about this? Why? Because we say that the relation between the government, the state and the citizens is what you call two-person zero-sum game. The state can acquire more powers only at the cost of the freedoms of the citizens. That is the reason why we say that that form of governance is the best which governs the least. And what is happening is that in the recent times, what is happening? Why this question we have asked is that because in recent times what is happening is that in the name of security, and in the name of welfare, in the name of security and in the name of welfare, the government is taking away our freedoms. For example, the debate regarding this Sedition Act. Should there be any Sedition Act in a free and independent country like India? On the one hand, you talk about right to freedom of speech and expression. On the other hand, you talk about sedition, saying that any criticism of the government can be considered as sedition, and you can be arrested by the government without any trial for any length of time also, which is against the principles of freedom. And similarly, you can see people cannot eat what they want, because immediately in the name of traditions and customs you will be subjected to different kinds of controls. Please remember, this year these kind of things are very important. It will be asked for essay also. I won't be surprised if this statement will be asked for essay also. These are the things which are important nowadays. Why? Because the societies have become intolerant. We are witnessing a huge amount of intolerance in the society, not only from the vested interests, the groups in the society, but also from the government also. For example, if I don't want to sing the national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, it should be my right. Who are you to ask me to sing a national anthem? Who are you to ask me to stand up when the national anthem is being shown on in cinema screens? If I am not standing, what is happening? People are they are beating me, taking away my freedom. The way you have the freedom to respect your country, the way I have my freedom to have my own views about my own country. As long as I am not causing any harm to other people, I must be given the freedom to live the way I like. That is what the question says. The most important kind of freedom is to be what you really are. Otherwise, what is happening is that all the time you are forced to wear a mask. That is what we say personality. Persona means mask. In personality, persona means mask. You are always forced to wear a mask to cover your real personality for the sake of the society. In the name of traditions, customs, laws, and also in the name of the state power. That is the reason why we have asked this question. That men do not learn very much from the lessons of history is the most important of all the lessons of history. Explain the significance of the above statement in the present context. What the statement says is that it says that we have not learnt anything from the past lessons of history, and that is the most important lesson that we have to learn. Little bit confusing. That men do not learn very much from the lessons of history is the most important of all the lessons of history. What does it mean? It says that since the beginning of civilization, we never learnt anything from the mistakes we have committed in the past. We have never learnt anything from the mistakes that we have committed in the past. That is the most important the lesson of all the lessons of history. That means a society can progress only when it learns from the past lessons of history. The progress of a society depends only on when it learns from the past lessons of the history. That is what we say. What are the examples can you give here? For example, you take the case of this wars. You take the case of wars. All of us know that fighting wars is a costly affair which causes huge amount of damage to financial, human and other resources. But we keep on fighting wars. We don't want to solve our problems through peaceful negotiations. We still believe that fighting war is the only way we can win our opposition. Now knowing fully well that for example, within a period of 30 years we fought 2 world wars in the last century, and after that also we have seen countries fighting so many wars. Most of them are wars of aggression, not of defense. Why? Because we have not learnt lessons from the history. Similarly, similarly take the case of religion. The 1000 what you call holy war between Islam and Christianity, 1000-year-old war. Still, this religion continues to create divisions within us. In the name of religion, we are still fighting. Take the case of terrorism. The present root cause of terrorism all around the world is because of religion. Knowing fully well that no religion teaches its followers to fight wars in the name of religion, in the name of God. But we keep on doing those things. Now come to the administrative side here, governance side. Every government knows that subsidies are bad. Subsidies will ruin the economy. But what every government does? They keep on only giving more subsidies. When did we learn from the lessons of history? Coming back to India only. One more example we can give. We know that public sector enterprises, if there are losses, they are incurring losses, they cannot achieve the objective of welfare maximization of people, white elephants. But we still continue with those public sector enterprises. Again, if you look at the economic survey, again it has said that public sector enterprises are incurring losses running into thousands of crores of rupees. But we still continue with them. Why? Because we have not learnt any lessons from history. That is what history. That is what this question says. Understanding the statements is very, very important here. That's why I gave this kind of statements. So that when you write the mains, you will be more tuned to these kind of questions. Public servants work solely for the state and not for the society, as it was first which determined the choice of the citizens. Hegel discussed the moral dilemmas faced by public servants. This is what we say. Hegel, one of the important philosophers, he said that even though they are called public servants, public servants means servants of the people, public. Even though they are called public servants, they always work for the state and not for the people. They always work for the state and not for the people. In case they have any conflict here, most of the time they side themselves with those who are in positions of power in the state, rather than siding themselves with the people. You can give the examples. For example, a person may be an honest bureaucrat, but he will be forced to implement the unconstitutional orders given by the political executive. Why he is forced to implement unconstitutional orders given by the political executive? Because why he is forced to implement the illegal orders given by the minister? Because out of fear of being transferred. They are attached so much with their position, power, perks, that they don't want to lose any of those things. That results in their failure. And that is what the moral dilemmas they face on a day-to-day basis. That is what we call conflict of interest. There is always conflict of interest. There is always what we call conflict of interest. In the functioning of civil servants, should they be siding themselves with the people or those who are in positions of power in the state? If they side themselves with the people, what happens? They will be punished. Someone like Ashok Kenka, who was transferred more than 50 times in a 25-year-old career. Because you are honest, sincere, efficient bureaucrat. So that is the reason why what do? They try to compromise with their values and side themselves with those who are in positions of power. And in the process, bureaucracy becomes an institution of exploitation. That is what we say. They become an institution of exploitation. They become a willing institution in the hands of this capitalist class. That is what Karl Marx has said. Bureaucracy becomes a willing institution in the hands of the capitalist class to continue their exploitation of ordinary masses. And that is the reason why we say that they must have values. After writing all these things, you have to provide the solutions. Yeah, towards the end, you have to provide the solutions. They must have the right kind of values. What are the values? Honesty, selflessness, courage of conviction, and empathy. So that they always side themselves with the people. That is what you say. You write for this question towards the end. Yeah. In ethics, there is no middle path. Either, this is what always tell in my class also. When there is conflict between good and bad, you cannot be sitting on the wall. If you are sitting on the wall, means you are siding yourself with bad. No, you cannot. The difference between GS answers, other papers of GS answers and ethics is that you have to be blunt. You cannot be, what you call bureaucratic in your approach. Differentiate between code of conduct and code of ethics. Explain their significance to public services with the relevant examples. In fact, this question I gave 2 years back. Last year UPSC asked this question. In my ethics paper 2 years back, in fact this question paper I prepared 2 years back. 2 years back I gave the same question, differentiate between code of conduct and code of ethics. And unfortunately last year UPSC asked the same question. Every year I have to change the questions because UPSC is copying from our test series. That is where the problem is. This year also I don't know what to give because every time there is no what you call intellectual property rights. So what is the difference between code of conduct and code of ethics? The difference in terms of their objectives. The objective of code of conduct is to prevent negative behavior among civil servants, whereas the objective of code of ethics is to promote positive values. This code of conduct had come into existence because of the corruption in the company civil servants for the first time in India. Under Robert Clive, after Bengal province was occupied by the Britishers, almost every company civil servant had become corrupt, causing huge amount of financial damage to the East India Company. That is when Lord Cornwallis, he became the Governor General, and he had come out with what is called Cornwallis Code. And what is this Cornwallis Code? Company civil servant should not accept any gifts or bribes. They should not have any private properties, and they should not have any private trade of their own, and they cannot buy any immovable properties in India, and they must submit their income and expenditure accounts on an annual basis to the East India Company. And then later more was added to code of conduct when the power was transferred from East India Company to the British Parliament. They included hierarchy, rule orientation, value neutrality to this code of conduct. After independence, we have added more to this code of conduct. We have included political neutrality and secrecy in administration also. Civil Services Conduct Rules 1964. We have included secrecy in administration and also political neutrality. Then what happened? We realized the fact that this code of conduct is necessary but not sufficient to achieve the objectives of development administration. That is when the Second Administrative Reforms Commission, in its report on ethics in governance, has recommended a code of ethics. This code of ethics is being influenced by the British Parliament's code of ethics. In the United Kingdom, in 1990s, the British Parliament had appointed a committee, Nolan Committee, to suggest code of ethics for its civil servants. And our code of ethics also is influenced by that. What does this code of ethics contain? It contains all those values which are necessary for civil servants to be successful in terms of implementing developmental objectives. It includes honesty, integrity, selflessness, empathy, exemplary leadership, transparency, accountability, objectivity, impartiality, non-partisanship, so on and so forth. There are at least 20-25 values they must possess. That is what we say about code of ethics. At present, in our Indian administration, there is only code of conduct, but there is no code of ethics. Code of conduct is what you call compulsory. If you violate the code of conduct, the government can punish you for violating the code of conduct in the form of suspension and even removal also. For example, in Gujarat, the police officer was removed from services. Why? Because he violated code of conduct. Similarly, recently also, if you look at it, 15 IRS IT officers and IRS customs officers were removed from services for violating code of conduct. Whereas code of ethics is mostly voluntary in nature. Next, corruption in India is both systemic and systematic. Explain the statement with relevant examples. Corruption in India is both systemic and systematic. When you say about systemic, it is related to the functioning of the systems. We say that it is the political system, economic system, administrative system and social and cultural systems which are responsible for high levels of corruption in India. When you say systematic, it takes place in a highly organized manner. Why we have so much of corruption in India? As second RC says, corruption is equal to monopoly plus discretion plus secrecy minus accountability. It takes place in a highly organized systematic manner. That is the reason why whatever may be the government that is in power, corruption will always be there in the system. Monopoly plus discretion plus secrecy minus accountability. As long as our administrative system has these features, corruption will always be there. That is the reason why whichever political party is in power in India, in the last 70 years, corruption has not come down. Every political party that comes to power will say that they will remove corruption. This can be done only by implementing multi-dimensional reforms. You must end the monopoly of the state in allocation of services. You must end the discretionary powers of public officials. You must remove complete secrecy in administration, and you must ensure the accountability of civil servants. Otherwise, corruption will always be there. Even after BJP came to power also in the last 5 years, corruption is always there. India's ranking has not improved much in terms of corruption. Only thing is that the top level corruption has come down, but the corruption that is there in the middle level and low levels in the government is always flourishing also. Why? Because you must implement this kind of systematic reforms, which the government has not implemented. Next, rules and regulations are necessary but not yes. Why should it deter? Because as I said that as long as these things are there, corruption will be there. For example, I am working as a clerk in a district collector's office. My collector is honest, no problem. But there is no effective supervision over my work. An old man comes to my office seeking pension. I will say that I will release your pension if you give me only 1,000 rupees. Where are grievance redressal mechanisms? What can this old man do? Similarly, you went there for a cost certificate. I will say that I will give you cost certificate, but you have to give me 1,000 rupees. Aadhaar is expected to remove corruption. In fact, Aadhaar had become the major source of corruption. Because to get Aadhaar card, you have to bribe the officials. Unless you make this kind of systematic changes, the country can never get rid of corruption. This question, as I said, it will be asked, when I asked this question in ethics paper, the same question was in that year was asked in polity governance paper. The same question was there. Corruption is both systematic and systemic in nature. Next, rules and regulations are necessary but not sufficient to influence the values, behaviors and attitudes of civil servants. Examine the role of other factors in shaping the character of civil servants with relevant examples. So, what are the factors that will influence the values, behaviors and attitudes of civil servants apart from rules and regulations? What are the other factors that will influence the values, behaviors of civil servants? This is what we study as part of probity in governance. This is what we study in probity in governance. So what we say here is that probity in governance can be ensured with the structural factors like rules, regulations, hierarchy, so on and so forth. But more than the structural factors, what is required is behavioral factors. Behavioral factors. Behavioral factors. As again, the CS Economic Survey says, it is all about behavioralism. It is all about behavioral factors. It says that the assumption that we make that human beings are rational is completely wrong. We are not rational. We are emotional. We are sentimental. So obviously, nudging. That is what economic survey says. You must nudge the people to change their behavior. How this can be done? With is what we call in ethics, positive reinforcers and negative reinforcers. Positive and negative reinforcers. In terms of positive reinforcers, you must inculcate positive values in them. How can you inculcate positive values in bureaucracy? The problem here is that bureaucrats, they are not from a separate planet. They belong to the same society as everyone else, and they reflect the values of the society. If everyone in the society is corrupt, can you expect the bureaucracy to be honest? Or should we expect the bureaucracy to be honest? Obviously not. For example, dowry is a major social evil. As a bureaucrat, once you come to positions of power, you are expected to remove dowry and punish those people who are taking dowry. But the first thing after you get into services you will be looking at is how much dowry you will get. Right? Under these circumstances, can these kind of rules and regulations, it has been there for a long period of time. Dowry. Similarly, as economic survey says again, minimum wages act is there since 1948. Minimum wages act. It is there since 1948. But how many people in India get those minimum wages? Why? Because as we keep on saying, laws, rules and regulations have only a very limited influence on our behavior. Normally, rationality demands that we should implement laws, rules and regulations. But we are not rational. So there is something else that determines our behavior. What is that something else? We have to find out and we have to change our behavior. That is what I said, positive reinforcers. Society must highlight those people who are hardworking, who are sincere, who are honest, and they should become the role models. They should become the role models so that the overall value system of the society can be improved. But the problem is that in our society, in materialistic societies, who are the role models? Those who become successful in life in a short period of time, irrespective of the means they have adopted. Who are the role models for India, young people in India? Mukesh Ambani. Why is he a role model? Why? Because he is the richest person in India. A role model is Narendra Modi. Why? He is the Prime Minister of the country, most powerful person. Can you name at least one role model, who is honest, sincere, selfless, and also had become popular? That is where the problem is. That is the reason why we say that, if you want to change the value system of civil servants, rules and regulations are necessary, but more than rules and regulations, you must change the society. Because they, at the end of the day, belong to the society. They reflect and gets reflected by the societal values. And then, and how can they change their behavior? At the end of the day, as our syllabus also talks about, it is our conscience. That is the most important source of behavior. It is the most important source of our values, human conscience. All those people who are taking bribes, all those people who are misusing and abusing power, they know that what they are doing is bad. But what do? They silence their conscience. They kill their voice of conscience. And that is the reason why we must make sure that we listen to our voice of conscience. When can we listen to our voice of conscience? Only, as Gautam Buddha says, only when our mental culture is straightened, straightening our views. That is what Gautam Buddha says, 10 meritorious deeds. You have to write about all these things. And similarly, that is what Bhagavad Gita also talks about. It says that Advaita philosophy. If we are able to see God in every person that we come across, what is our feeling towards God? We always worship God. In the same manner, we worship other human beings. We will have only, the feeling of worship, respect towards God. The same thing we will have for other people also. Then we will not cheat them, we will not deceive them, we will not exploit them. That is what we say, we have to write for this question. Rules and regulations cannot, cannot influence our behavior. For example, Prevention of Corruption Act is there. It is there since 1988. Before that it was also there. But it did not stop corruption, PCA, Prevention of Corruption Act. Next, if civil servants have empathy, nothing else matters. If they don't have empathy, again nothing else matters. Discuss. This is what we say, a very popular statement. If civil servants have empathy, nothing else matters. If they have empathy, nothing else matters. Why do we say that? If they have empathy, automatically they will inculcate all other values. If they have empathy, they will be honest, they will have integrity, they will be selfless, they will ensure equity, they will always be impartial, they will always ensure non-partisanship, they will always, they will always be what we call ensure transparency in administration, they will always be efficient. All other values will become part of their personality if they have empathy. If they have empathy, all other values become part of their personality. That is the reason why we say that if they have empathy, nothing else matters. If they have empathy, nothing else matters, because automatically rest of all the values will become part of their personality. The second part of the statement is also important. If they don't have empathy, again nothing else matters. Why? Because howsoever efficient you may be, howsoever transparent you may be, howsoever honest you may be, if you don't have empathy, none of these values will be reflected in your functioning. None of these values will be reflected in your functioning if you don't have empathy. Functioning if you don't have empathy. That is the reason why we say that if they have empathy, nothing else matters. If they don't have empathy, again nothing else matters. These questions you can expect this year. They will ask this question. Discuss the significance of corporate governance in the context of global financial crisis the world has witnessed in recent times. Why corporate governance is important? Why? Because you start with Mahatma Gandhi's statement. The earth has enough resources to satisfy the needs of the people but not their greed. It has enough resources to satisfy the needs but not their greed. Then again you start with the deontological ethics. Means are as equally important as ends. Means are as equally important as ends. And what happened in the global financial crisis in recent times? These multinational companies, in order to earn abnormal profits, in a short period of time, have adopted illegal, unethical and immoral means. They have adopted illegal, unethical and immoral means. And what is the outcome? The outcome is the collapse of financial systems around the world. Financial systems around the world. And it resulted in global recession. It resulted in global recession. So the greed of some people had impacted billions of people around the world. And that is the reason why we talk about corporate governance. For the first time, we talked about corporate governance after in the 1930s Great Depression. First time we talked about corporate governance after 1930s Great Depression in United States of America. In India, again we are talking about corporate governance. Why? Because of the recent scams that had taken place. Nirav Modi scam and the collapse of this IL&FS, the non-banking financial company, and then this Vijay Malaya scam and the high amount of NPAs of banks. That is where we talk about corporate governance. Apart from this, we also have witnessed so many scams. 2G spectrum is there, coal scam was there, other scam was there, spectrum, all these mining scam, you name it, different kinds of scams have taken place. That is the reason why we are talking about corporate governance. Why? Because what do we study in ethics? The natural tendency of any society is to move towards entropy. The natural tendency is to move towards entropy, that is destruction. With the passage of time, the only thing that is certain is destruction. If you have to prevent this destruction, you must have ethics. That is where corporate governance becomes important. Again, this question you can expect this year. In fact, most of the questions that we have discussed can be expected this year in your ethics paper. Discuss the ethical issues involved in migration of people from developing to developed countries and unwillingness of the developed world to accept the refugees from the third world. Again, this is an issue that is being hotly debated and discussed around the world. Recently also you must have seen, there was this photograph in United States of America, people from Mexico, migrating, they wanted to enter into America illegally and they died, while crossing the river. A person and his son also. That really again shocked the entire world. I think you must have seen that photo also. That again brought into focus the ethics in international relations. The question that we are asking here is that developed countries, they had become developed. How did they become developed? They had become developed only because of the centuries of exploitation of the developing world in the name of imperialism and colonialism. Now, what they are saying, they do not want anyone from the developing world to come and settle in their countries. They are closing their borders, they are closing their hearts also. They are not willing to open their hearts as well as borders, raising questions about migration. And that is the reason why, what do we say? What is the solution to these kind of problems? The problem here is that you can see Donald Trump, he is also totally against these migrants and refugees. For him, America first and America last also. That is the reason why he is imposing a lot of curbs on H-1B visa. And America wants only what you call high-skilled professionals. They do not want anyone else. The same is the case with most of the European countries, because all of them are welfare states. If someone comes into their country, it increases financial burden on the part of their countries. So they do not want any kind of migration. And that is the reason why what we can see is that people are trying to enter into those countries through illegal and other means. In the process, they die also because they had to take a lot of risk also. So under these circumstances, the question that is being asked is, do these developed world, they have any kind of ethical responsibility towards the developing nations, because they exploited the developing nations for hundreds of years. Now they are saying that we don't want to take any kind of responsibility. And what is the solution? The solution, as we have said, is international relations should be guided by enlightened self-interest. They should be guided by enlightened self-interest. What do we mean by that? They must realize the fact that their interests lie in overall welfare of the society. That is what we study in ethics. Individual happiness lies in overall welfare of the society, and that is what ethics also teaches. They teach us that if there is a conflict between our self-interest and societal welfare, we should always give importance to societal welfare, because everyone is part of the society. In the same manner, developed countries can continue with their prosperity, continue with their riches only when the rest of the world is also prosperous. For example, America depends more on the rest of the world than vice versa, because America contributes around 25% to global trade and global output. Whatever America produces is more than sufficient for their consumption. They can become rich only by exporting their goods and services to other countries. And America can become rich only, had become rich only because of these migrants. That is the reason why they cannot forget their history. They must realize the fact that it is in their long-term interest that they must be willing to ensure the development of the other countries around the world also. They must be willing to accept. Why? Because all these developed countries, what is the major problem that they are facing now? They are facing the major problem of what? Aged population. Only countries like India have this demographic dividend. As economic survey says, India can benefit out of this demographic dividend between 2005 to 2050. Even China right now is facing the problem of aged population. And what happens with aged population? The government has to spend a lot of money on the pensions and on other welfare schemes for this aged population because they are not working, they cannot work. And how can the government spend that money? Only when their GDP incomes are more. When can their GDP and incomes are more? Only when they have more number of people in the working population. And countries, the developing countries have lot of number of people in the working population. If they migrate to the developed countries, it can ensure balance. That is what. Please remember, this question will definitely be asked this year in your polity governance paper, IR. Definitely it will be asked, the same question. Next, let us come to case studies. In recent times, the country has witnessed a spate of suicides by farmers in different parts. On the one hand, the government is implementing many welfare schemes for farmers, but their effectiveness can be questioned in terms of outcomes. It is believed that the benefits of these schemes mostly are cornered by rich and wealthy farmers, leaving the real beneficiaries out of these schemes. Land reforms also have not been implemented effectively, as can be seen in the distribution of land holdings in the country. Discuss some feasible strategies to overcome this problem, both in the short term as well as in the long term. As I said, UPSC, when it comes to case studies, they are asking at least 3 case studies which are what we call macro ones, and 3 case studies which are micro ones, individual case studies. Macro ones like migration from rural to urban areas. Macro ones like sustainable development, the balance between economic growth and environmental protection. Macro ones like women protection and women safety. Macro ones like education of girl child. What can be done? So nowadays, the major problem is agrarian crisis. In fact, when I gave this case study 2 years back, in the same year, this was asked for 125 marks essay, agrarian crisis. That is what I always say, that whatever the case studies we do in the class will always be potential questions for essays. You must make sure that you are very thorough with all these case studies. If it is not coming for 20-25 marks, it will definitely come for 125 marks as essay. That is why we have to be very careful about them. So as the question says, agrarian crisis. What are the strategies to overcome this problem in both short term as well as in the long term? So obviously what the question says is that the welfareist approach of the government has not really succeeded. Why? Because most of the subsidies given by the government have been cornered by rich and wealthy farmers. For example, MSP, minimum support price. If you take the case of MSP, only 6% of farmers in our country benefited from MSP. And who are those 6% of farmers? Farmers from Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, and some parts of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. Rest of the farmers don't even know about MSP also. When the government is making so much of hue and cry about MSP, saying that MSP is one of the solutions, it is not. Because if you have to talk about MSP, the farmer has to bring his produce to the market also. APMCs, agricultural price market, product marketing, price marketing committees. Now 99% of the produce of small and marginal farmers will not come to the market also. So obviously this cannot be the solution. The government is always not really interested in what you call finding solutions to structural problems. What are the structural problems facing the agriculture in our country? That is what we have discussed as part of the economic survey discussion also the other day. What are the structural problems? Small size of land holdings, and then high input costs. The terms of trade for agriculture sector is negative, high input costs, and then high cost of credit, because 60% of small and marginal farmers get loans only from money lenders. They are taking only loans from money lenders. And then another problem is for our farmers is only 45% of our land is irrigated. Rest of the land depends on monsoon. Even this year also you can see agriculture kharif output coming down drastically because monsoon is uneven. And it is not even touched some other parts of the country also. It is very less. In the month of June itself, it was 33% deficient monsoon. So when you have so many of these problems, just by giving subsidies, can you think you can overcome the problem? Obviously not. So what is the solution? As we have said, the solution has to be is systemic and systematic. There is no ethics in this question. It has to be completely from the point of view of in a macro, in an economic point of view. You have to write the answer. Yeah. Yeah. Unless you mention problems, how can you come out with solutions? Yes, you can repeat them. In the question they have not given, they have given only one or two problems. They said that the farmers are committing suicide. The government is implementing many welfare schemes. They have not been effective. That is what they say. What are the other problems of farmers? The question does not mention. So you have to mention the problems. Why the farmers are committing suicide? Why they are committing suicide? It is a chain reaction. Why they are committing suicide? They are committing suicide because they could not repay the debt, loans. Why did they take the loans from money lenders? Because formal banking system has not spread to deepest pockets of our country. Even now also after Jan Dhan also only 55% of our country has access to banks, and especially small and marginal farmers. They are not landlords. That is what is called tenancy farming in India. So obviously they are not able to get loans. So they are taking loans from the money lenders. Because they don't have access. All this chain reaction you have to talk about. And then these money lenders charge huge amount of rate of interest. Why? Because RBI has no control over these money lenders. And then why are they taking loans? What is the purpose of taking loans? They are taking loans for for irrigation facilities. Since the land is not irrigated, they wanted bore wells in their farms. And the problem here is that even after going down for even after 1000 feet also, they are not able to get water. Recently it has been shown also that in some places after 1000 feet what is coming out is oil but not water. Water is not there. Water table is going down drastically all over the country. The country is facing severe water crisis. There is no water for irrigation. And what happens? They have taken the loan. There is no water. Severe drought conditions. They cannot repay the loan. There is so much of pressure on them. What do? They commit suicide. And what does the government do? Whenever a farmer commits suicide, the government says that first the government will never accept the fact that farmer has committed suicide. Maharashtra state government has said that farmers have committed suicide not because of their loan defaults, not because of their borrowings, but because of other problems. Some of them have committed suicide because they were depressed. Some of them have committed suicide because they have failed in love. That is the national crime report, the state crime report of Maharashtra state government has said. Because it is below their dignity to accept the fact that their farmers have committed suicide. No state government, no district collector will say that in my district farmers have committed suicide. Whenever there is any suicide, in order to avoid compensation also the government will say that they have committed suicide for personal reasons, family reasons. Because the government is not willing to acknowledge the problem. Why? Because these farmers, the government remembers them only at the time of elections. For example, in this year's budget, in the interim budget, the government had given huge amount of money for farmers in terms of Kisan scheme. And in the present budget, farmers were not even mentioned also, agriculture. The only difference, the only change the government has made is they have renamed the agriculture ministry into agriculture and farmer welfare. So beyond that, you require systematic reforms. You have to write all those systematic reforms. All those systematic reforms. You have to talk about improving irrigation facilities. You must talk about using JAM, Jan Dhan Aadhaar and Mobile, to give loans to farmers. You have to talk about improving storage facilities, warehouse and cold storage facilities. You have to talk about removing the middlemen. You have to talk about reforming the APMCs. You have to talk about zero budget farming, organic farming. You have to talk about ensuring that these MSPs are revised regularly on time. And you have to talk about other reforms like improvement in the marketing facilities, using e-NAMs. All these things you have to write as part of this question. As I said, again this year, whether it is your economy or ethics or essay, agriculture is again going to be a very, very important topic. You can last year also in your economy out of 10 questions, 3 questions are only from agriculture. Next, you are working as a district magistrate of a district where illegal mining of sand is rampant. Recently, there was an accident between a truck illegal carrying sand and a government passenger bus. Many passengers died on the spot because of the accident. Ever since you assumed power, you are trying to curb this illegal mining of sand. Because of negligence and involvement of police officers at the local level, illegal mining is going on in many parts of the district despite your efforts to curb it. These trucks which travel on narrow village roads have not only damaged roads, they have also caused traffic problems for passenger vehicles, frequently causing accidents. The media and some people from a political party are protesting against you after the bus accident. They are saying that you are working hands in glove with the sand mafia. There is also an accusation that you are not in good terms with the police in the district, which has resulted in lack of coordination. Moreover, even the local media is also portraying you as someone intentionally allowing illegal sand mining in the district. In this situation, what are your options? How will you deal with the accusations? And how will you manage the situation? So, what is the problem here? What is the problem here? What are the issues involved here? First and foremost, the accidents, regular accidents that are taking place. Second one is the illegal sand mafia in the district. Third problem is the perception within the people in the district regarding your efficiency. They think that regarding your integrity, they think that you are in hands in glove with the sand mafia. Fourth one is the perceived differences between you and the superintendent of police, the police in the district. The perceived differences between you and the police. The question says that you are not in good terms with the police in the district also. And then finally, the media is also against you. Media also, local media also is against you. You have to change the opinion of the media also. So, what should you do? What are your options? What are your options? What can you do? Either take action against those people or seek transfer from the district, saying that I cannot handle this situation. You can approach your superiors and seek transfer from the district. Obviously, the second option is not what you are looking for. If you are seeking transfer from the district, what is the merit? The problems, you will not be confronting all those problems. What is the demerit? It shows that you are an inefficient, inefficient and what you call covered officer who cannot face problems, which is not good. So what you have to do is that you must come out with a solution to the problem. You must come out with a solution. So what is the solution to the problem here? When you are coming out with a solution, you have to come out with a solution to all these issues. You have to come out with a solution to all these issues. Not only that, you must make sure that this kind of problems do not occur in the future again. You must come out with what is called long-term solution also to the problem. You must come out with long-term solution also. So what should you do? What will you do? What will you do? First and foremost, what will you do? You will identify the culprits who are responsible for accident, causing that accident that killed so many innocent people. You will identify the culprits. Identify culprits and ensure that they are punished severely. Why? Because to restore the confidence of the people in the rule of law. They are punished, and you will ensure that they are severely punished. Second, you have to find solutions to so many other issues that the question has mentioned. Next thing what you do is that you will meet the superintendent of police to remove the perception that you are not in talking terms with the police. You will meet the superintendent of police and hold discussions with him regarding law and order in the district. and direct him to take tough measures against the sand mafia. Direct him to take tough measures against sand mafia. Third, perception is also very important in administration. So what do? He will address a press conference. He will address a press conference with Superintendent of Police. He will address a press conference with Superintendent of Police to remove the negative perception that you are not in talking terms with the police. And what is the objective of this press conference? To tell the media as well as the people of the district that both of you are working together. There are no differences. Fourth thing, you have to find solution to the problem of illegal sand mafia. So what you have to do? You will request the local media, civil society organizations, to keep a constant vigil on this sand mafia and report it to you as and when these incidents take place. This is what is called community policing. Community policing. And fifth, as and when this kind of incidents take place, he will take a very strong action against those sand mafia who are violating the rules and regulations. You will take strong action. Next, in order to prevent accidents, what do? You will focus on improving the conditions of roads. The conditions of roads in the district. You will focus on improving the conditions of roads in the district. You will focus on improving the conditions of roads in the district. And finally, as a long-term measure, you will request the government to come out with proper guidelines regarding mining of sand in the district. Proper guidelines. So that this illegal sand mining can be prevented. It can be prevented. This is what you have to write for this question. Next question. You are a police officer working in the anti-terror wing. Recently, there are reports of one of your subordinates using third-degree methods to extract a confession from the terrorists. He is known for his efficiency and honesty. Cases were filed by the relatives of the person who was arrested on suspicions regarding his links to terror modules. He was tortured in the cell and the case has become sensational. Finally, it was proved that this person is innocent. Local media is extremely critical of the actions of your subordinate, and judiciary also has intervened in this matter. You are under extreme pressure to suspend the officer and take penal action against him. What are the options in front of you? And select the best option by giving reasons. So what is the problem here? The issue here is custodial interrogation and use of third-degree methods which are prohibited. Use of third-degree methods. And another issue here is, there is this honest, efficient officer. His career is also important. Honest and efficient officer. And you are also facing a lot of pressure from media and judiciary also. So what is the problem here is that, if one of your subordinates, he is very honest, very efficient, but he is known for, using this kind of third-degree methods against terrorist suspects. That is what police mostly do. And one person was arrested and he was tortured in the police station, in the cell there. And finally it was proved that this person was innocent. And immediately the relatives had approached the judiciary by filing charges against the police officer, habeas corpus petition. And it had become very sensational. Media is also reporting every day this matter, talking about the cruel, inhuman methods used by the police. There is a lot of negative publicity. There is so much of what you call criticism against your officers. Under those circumstances, what will you do? What will you do? What will you do? You have to protect the integrity of your organization. You must also give assurance to your officers also, saying that you will, as the leader of the organization, you will also protect their interests. All these things are there. So what will you do? First and foremost, what you will do is that in order to ensure the integrity, in order to ensure the credibility of your organization, you will say that there will be a committee, independent committee, consisting of people from media, civil society organizations, as well as officers from the police department. Independent committee consisting of all these people. Yeah. That is what we are saying. What we are saying is that, according to our, legal, terminology, no person can be called accused. Every person is innocent till he is proved guilty, and the process of proving guilty should be done strictly according to what we call it as a due process of law. That is what we are doing now. So what you are telling is that, there will be an independent committee consisting of people from media, civil society organizations, human rights organizations, and from officers from your own department to investigate this police torture. Second, till the investigations are completed, you will request your subordinate to recuse himself from his duties. Recuse himself from his duties. RECUSE. Why? Because justice should not only be done, it should also seem to be done in the eyes of the people. As long as you are in positions of power, there is no scope for justice. You are not like the Chief Justice of India, who sits on judgment of his own case and says that I am innocent. That is not like that becomes banana republic, right? You must ensure proper justice also. Third, this committee will be given time. The time cannot be very long. Why? Because it is already impacting the credibility of your organization. Every day newspaper reports are coming. So this committee will be given, say, 24 hours or 48 hours to investigate, so that the uncertainty regarding the organization can also be ended. Fourth, if it is proved that this person was tortured in the jail, obviously you have to take action against the police officer. If it is proved, because you cannot be protecting those people who violate the law in the name of law. Illegal. Third degree method, sir. Yeah, if it is proved that departmental action will be taken against the person. What is obviously? Yes, because he is very honest and efficient person. He has committed a mistake. That is the reason why he cannot be extremely harsh. But at the same time, you must make him realize his mistake also. If it is proved, you will say that departmental action will be taken against the concerned officer. What you can do is that you can suspend him for some days. After that, you can again take back him into ordination, but you will not give him the same position. He will be transferred to some other. From anti-terror wing, he can be transferred to traffic. In traffic, you cannot torture the people. In traffic, traffic itself is a big torture. So, he can only happily see them. It is not an honest mistake. He was more sincere and committed. For him, he looks every person will be from Pakistan only. So he starts beating them. That was a mistake. That is the reason why we are punishing him. Fifth, yeah. Yeah. Yes, that is the reason why we cannot call it as a mistake also. It is not a genuine mistake. It was definitely a crime. And that is the reason why departmental action will be taken strictly according to established norms. And of course, if the relatives go ahead and file cases against him, they are free to do so. That is what Supreme Court has said. Supreme Court has said that the sovereignty of the state cannot rescue those police officers who commit these kind of crimes. You cannot claim the sovereignty of the state for your actions. So they will go ahead. But what you are doing is that you are telling them what you are going to do by being the senior officer in the department. If others, so they want to file cases, let them do whatever they want.
If we go to the Asta case, what Supreme Court said in the Asta case, what you said, sovereignty cannot be...
Exactly. You can say that one. You can write. That is what I am saying. Next step is that after doing all these things, the most important thing is how to prevent these kind of things from happening. How to prevent. That is the reason why you talk about sensitivity training to police. Give them training in human rights. Sensitivity training to police. And next thing is that there are so many advanced techniques to confession from the criminals. You don't have to use third degree methods. What are those techniques to get confession? Lie detector tests are there. Lie detector tests that can be conducted to find out about whether he is speaking truth or not. You don't have to use third degree methods. That is what you will write for this question. Yeah. Yeah? Best option. That is what? Yeah, all these points combined together is the best option. As part of the best option, you are doing all these things. There are two options for you. As I said that, ignore all these complaints and don't take any action. That will damage your organization both in the short term as well as in the long term. Saying that, I know about my officer, he is very honest, I will not tolerate any kind of this nonsense from the press or, the people. And on the other hand, you file cases against those people, who have made accusations against the officer. That is not. The best option is this one. Next. Yeah. Yeah. That is what. Let the judiciary do its function. That's what I said that already the relatives have filed a habeas corpus case against the officer. Let the judiciary give its own judgment, but you are also punishing the officer according to departmental norms. You are also punishing the officer. Let the judiciary also take care of all those things. And obviously, when you already have taken action against him, in the form of suspending him or anything else, judiciary also will take into consideration the action that already the department has taken. That is what we will say, double jeopardy. You cannot be punished twice for the same crime. Naxalism is one of the major law and order problems faced by the country in recent times. It is said that the spread of Naxalism has its origins in failure to implement land reforms in the country. Backwardness in rural areas coupled with lack of opportunities for rural youth and failure of development schemes to reach targeted beneficiaries are some of the reasons for the spread of Naxalism. In recent times, mining in tribal areas and resulting displacement of tribals also contributed to it. Discuss some of the feasible measures to tackle the menace of Naxalism. Again, when I gave this question in ethics paper, the same thing was asked in your general studies paper 3 in internal security. The second statement, it is said that the spread of Naxalism has its origins in failure to implement land reforms. Exactly the same statement was given for 20 marks in paper 3 in internal security. As I said, if you are doing ethics means you are doing all papers of GS only. Right? So coming back here, this is a macro case study. Discuss some of the feasible measures to tackle the menace of Naxalism. He has already given the reasons for the spread of Naxalism. What are the reasons for the spread of Naxalism? Initially it was the failure to implement land reforms, then exploitation of the tribals, and later after liberalization, globalization and privatization, the mining that is taking place in forest areas, wherein the tribals were forcibly removed from their original livelihood and asked to go back to other places. And that is where Naxal had come and fought in favor of the tribals, in the process gaining the sympathy of the tribals. And also the developmental schemes implemented by the government could not reach these tribals, the poorer sections, especially in rural areas, because of high levels of corruption within the government. So what kind of feasible measures can you suggest to tackle the menace of Naxalism? What can be done? Again, please remember, this can be asked this year also. It can be asked this year also. It can be asked in your essay also, general essay, Naxalism. So, what are the measures that we can suggest to tackle the menace of Naxalism? First and foremost, what we say is that in the short term, Naxalism should be treated as a law and order problem. Law and order problem. So what should the government do to tackle this Naxalism? The government must strengthen the police machinery. For example, in the states like Andhra Pradesh, they had come out with a special police force called Greyhounds to tackle Naxals. Police were given special training, to fight Naxals in forest areas. It is called Greyhounds. They were given special training. When you get into IPS police service, you will be going to Hyderabad for police training, NPA, National Police Academy. And when you go to Hyderabad, you will be going into the forests of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. You will stay there for at least 20 days, 25 days in those forests only, and you will be given training there as part of Greyhounds training, to tackle Naxalism. This is part of your training of police, IPS. Every year, that is what happens. At least 1 month, you are completely cut off from the rest of the world. You will be staying only in the forest, deep forest, as part of training. And that is what Andhra Pradesh state government has done. They had given special training to police forces to fight Naxals in forest areas, because Naxals indulge in what is called guerrilla tactics. You have to understand their tactics to fight them. That is what you have to do. Second, what are the other things that you can do, to tackle Naxalism? You have to use the technology, these drones. That is what again the state government has done. Drones. They are used to map Naxal areas. They are used to find out the movements of Naxals also. Next, what did the state government do? What is the state government has done? They have also taken the help of what you call the people in the tribal areas, police informers. What again you call it as community policing. And that is what Chhattisgarh state government also has done as part of this. What are they called in Chhattisgarh? Salwa Judam. Salvajudum. SALWA, special police officers. Young people in the villages, tribal areas are given weapons to fight the Naxals, and they were paid, by the government also. A monthly salary of around 2,500 rupees were also given to them to fight Naxals. Salvajudum. Of course, Supreme Court had declared it as illegal because the state cannot give weapons to the people. That is what. Next, how to treat this Naxalism as a law and order problem. Identify the top leadership of Naxalites and make sure that they are eliminated, because the entire Naxal movement is based on the strong leadership. Identify the top leadership and make sure that they are always eliminated. They are eliminated. This is part of the tactics. Identify them and make sure that they are eliminated. Next, on the law and order front only, you must ensure proper coordination between the central police forces, CRPF, and other police forces, and the state police. They must ensure coordination between. That is the reason why what happens in places like Chhattisgarh or Odisha or Maharashtra, because of this lack of coordination, you find so many CRPF personnel being killed in these Naxal attacks. This is what you have to do in the short term by treating it as a law and order problem. In the long term, we say that we must treat this Naxalism as a socio-economic problem. In the long term, we must treat it as a socio-economic problem, socio-economic issue. So what you have to do here, to treat Naxalism, first you must ensure good governance in the functioning of a bureaucracy. You must ensure good governance in the functioning of bureaucracy. Why? Why good governance is required? Can you also cite? Yeah, no, it is not required because this is a macro case study. You have to provide macro solutions, not what individual officers have done. What you can do is that whatever the officer has done, you can take that as right and write it as a solution without mentioning the name of the officer. That's not required. You must ensure good governance. Why this good governance? Why? Because with the objective of ensuring that the benefits of the welfare schemes of the government reach poorer sections of society, the weaker sections of society, especially in rural and tribal areas. Why they are attracted towards Naxals? Why they are attracted towards Naxals? They are attracted towards Naxal because of the inability of the state to find solutions to their problems. Because of the failure of the state to find solutions to their problems. That is the reason why we must ensure that the benefits of the programs will reach them. Next, third, the government must make sure that the interests of these tribals are protected. As and when the industries come up in those forest areas, the interests of these tribals are protected. As and when the industries come up in those tribal areas. How to protect the interests of tribals? With the help of what is called citizen charters, environmental and social impact assessments. Citizen charters, environment and social impact assessment. By making these people active participants in development process. By making these people active participants in development process. Recently, what happened in Gujarat, the state government, Gujarat state government has joined hands with the corporate sector. The state government has joined with hands with the corporate sector, and both of them have joined hands with the tribals. What happened? the outcome is, the outcome is what is called a win-win situation for everyone. The tribals in a voluntary manner had come forward and they had given the forest produce to the corporates, and the government acted as a middle man between the corporates and the tribals, and the government made sure that these corporates would pay sufficient compensation, and the corporates would also take care of the other basic needs of tribals as part of what is called CSR, corporate social responsibility. So when these things, when the development is taking place, obviously nobody will talk about Naxalism. That is what Gujarat state government has done, and this is what you have to write. And whenever, as and when the question of, because for a country to develop, it must utilize its natural resources. Most of the natural resources we find only either in rural areas or in forests. So obviously, if you can make those people who are original inhabitants of that particular area active participants in the process of development, you don't require any Naxalites. Why Naxalism had come up? Because of the failure of the state to solve the basic problems faced by people on a day-to-day basis. If the government can do this, you can easily tackle the problem of Naxalism, treating it as a socio-economic issue. And what can the government do also? This Forest and Tribal Rights Act is there. Forest Rights Act is there. You must be knowing about it. Forest Rights Act is there. Effective implementation of this Forest Rights Act. What does this Forest Rights Act say? They say that the forests belong to the tribals. If anybody wants to utilize the resources, they must take the consent, permission of the tribals. They must make sure that these tribals are not exploited. Effective implementation of this Forest Rights Act also. So this is what you will have to write for this question. Again, as I said that I won't be surprised if this question is not asked this year in your essay. Next, women empowerment in India remained a dream in spite of the fact that women constitute almost half of our population. Lack of political will, absence of awareness, poverty, lack of education, financial dependency are some of the reasons for failure of our societies to achieve the objectives of women empowerment. 33% reservation for women in local self-government has not really transformed the lives of the women in rural areas. Discuss some feasible strategies to ensure empowerment of women. Again, every year you must remember that one case study will always be related to women. Every year, and almost in all these case studies you are writing the similar answer, if not the same answer, because the problems are the same, the solutions will always be the same. So the question says that women empowerment. What UPSC is doing is that they are asking a specific situation and they are asking you to come out with macro solutions for that specific situation. They are giving a specific situation of children, girl child being denied. They are being denied to what they are being denied to get themselves educated because of the parochial attitudes. What will you do? Similarly, the sexual harassment that takes place at the office. These are the case studies. Similarly, false complaints made by women also. Misuse of this Nirbhaya legislation and other things. So these kind of things they are asking almost every year. You will have one question about women in your case studies, and you will be writing almost a similar answer for every case study. So it says that the question itself mentions the problems related to women empowerment: lack of political will, absence of awareness, poverty, lack of education, financial dependency are some of the reasons. 30% reservations also have not helped. What are feasible strategies to ensure empowerment of women in India? What do you think are some of the feasible strategies that will help us in ensuring the empowerment of women? What do you think are they? The question itself has said that the reservation is already given. In government jobs. Huh?
Even in private sector?
Even in private sector also. When you are talking about capitalism and reservation do not go together. The moment a private sector, you try to impose some restrictions on the private sector, they will run away. There will not be a single dollar of foreign direct investment.
Social welfare schemes such as
So, we have to, tackle this problem step by step. What are the problems here related to women empowerment? First and foremost, the safety and security of women. Safety and security of women. Safety and security of women. Why they are not coming out to work? Why? Because why they are not coming out for education also. Safety and security of women. In most of the schools, if you go to rural areas, girl child, they are not sent to schools because they don't have proper toilets also for girl child. Basic things, behavioral things. That is the reason why they are not being sent. And then, as I said, the safety and security of girl child. This is most important problem. Second, as I said, that basic amenities. They don't have any basic amenities in public places. They don't have any basic amenities. Third one is the parochial attitudes of male population. Parochial attitudes. What is the attitude? Women should always be treated as secondary grade citizens, feudal societies. Parochial attitudes. Next, fourth problem is the traditions and customs in our society. Traditions and customs in our society. What are the traditions and customs in our society? The traditions and customs in our society are such that women are expected to perform only certain functions. They are expected to take care of the house. They are expected to continue the dynasty, family dynasty. They are expected to take care of the children, within the household. They are not expected to come out. Why? Because when women go out and work, it is considered to be an affront to family prestige and honor. It is an affront, AFFRONT, to family prestige and honor. You don't mind living in poverty, but you will not allow your women to go out and work. That kind of tradition that we have in our society. Next, in a political system, what is the problem here? Women in India are not what we call a powerful pressure group. They are not a powerful pressure group. That means, in India we have pressure groups like, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, minorities, OBCs. They can demand reservations and they will get reservations. Marathas, they said that they should be included in OBC. Immediately the government has said that you take whatever the amount of reservations you want. But what is the reason why the government is not willing to give reservations for women? The 33% reservation bill for women in parliament is pending for a long period of time. Our Prime Minister talks about everything else but not the 33% reservation for women. Congress party says that if the Prime Minister is so much interested in the welfare of women, especially the Muslim women, by ending the triple talaq, let the Prime Minister come out with 33% reservations for women also in Parliament, we will support it. And the government says that we are only concerned about Muslim women, not all women. Why? Because, because women are never considered a pressure group in India, powerful pressure group in India. That is the reason why, at one point of time in India, we had a, women president and women most powerful leader in the country, Sonia Gandhi. Women president, women speaker of Lok Sabha, Meera Kumar, and women leader of opposition, women leader of opposition, Sushma Swaraj. But why women reservation bill was not passed? Ruling party agreed, opposition agreed, president agreed. Why it was not passed? All of them were headed by women only. In Congress party, Sonia Gandhi was the most powerful person. Still, she could not get women reservation bill passed. That is where the problem with India is. Okay. This is another problem. Next problem is the glass ceiling that we find in the private sector also. Not only the government, in the private sector also glass ceiling is there. women are not allowed to reach top level positions. How say ever efficient glass ceiling exists. Next thing is that the perception that women are good for only certain professions. They are good only for certain professions. Women are not allowed in army. Women are not allowed in active participation in politics. And the contribution, the proportion of women in government also, business also is very less. How many women entrepreneurs we have? For example, the government is promoting this idea of Dalit entrepreneurs, right? We have CIA. Similarly, we have some kind of CIA for Dalit entrepreneurs also. Government is promoting that idea. We have minority entrepreneurs also. But why not women entrepreneurs? That is where the problem. So, these are all the problems faced by them. Obviously, you have to tackle all these problems simultaneously. And another problem, as we have said, is that atrocities committed against women. When atrocities are committed against women, the culprits are never punished, because our law takes a huge amount of time, very long period of time, to punish the culprits. After 2012 Nirbhaya incident, the culprits are still spending their time in jail, in spite of the fact that Supreme Court had awarded capital punishment for them long time back. They are exploiting the law, the loopholes in the law. So these are all the problems, and you have to talk about the solutions. Please remember, this women, they can be asked in your paper 1, 2, 3, 4, all the 4 papers they will ask. And you have to write the same thing, social issues in paper 1. You have to write the same thing. And what is the solution here? You have to tackle all the problems. First and foremost, as I said, that safety and security of women. What did we do to ensure safety and security of women? We have come out with more legislations, Nirbhaya legislation. We have come out with more legislations. Now we think that once we come out with the legislation, the problem is solved. The problem is in implementing those legislations. We have not implemented any of those legislations. We have not provided safety and security. For this, we need what we call women police stations. We need to use the technology to provide security to women, working women or children, girl child who is getting educated, and we have to use technology. Then we have to provide the sensitivity training to our male police officers also in dealing with crimes against women. Then our judiciary also should be very efficient in coming out with strict punishments, so that rule of law is implemented in both letter and spirit. That is what we say. And then, as I said, that the government ensures that basic amenities are provided for women at workplaces, at public places. Very simple. India is a country which is completely insensitive to the problems of women. As I said that in most of the schools, primary schools in the villages, children are not being sent to schools, especially girl child, because they don't have even basic toilet facilities also. So that is what the government should focus on to bring about behavioral changes. And then how to change these parochial attitudes and traditions and customs. That is where we talk about ethics. Through positive reinforces and negative reinforces. You have to change the attitudes. You have to give the examples of successful women to the parents of the children, telling them that it is not only the male child, but also a female child who can carry on the legacy of the family. For example, take the case of Indira Gandhi. Jawaharlal Nehru had only Indira Gandhi as Indira Gandhi was the only child of Jawaharlal Nehru. Indira Gandhi, right? She was a female. But did Nehru abandon Indira Gandhi, saying that I don't have any male child? According to Hindu traditions and customs, it is only the male child who can carry forward the family legacy. But it was Indira Gandhi, who had become more popular than Jawaharlal Nehru, who carried on with the family legacy. You have to give these kind of examples to tell the people that female children can be more powerful than male also in carrying out family legacies. That is what we say. In ethics, that is what we study. Changing the attitudes and behaviors and values of people with the help of role models. Then you talk about the political system. Obviously the 33% reservation bill will not be passed in the present, what you call circumstances. Why? Because if 33% reservation bill for women is passed in Parliament, 1/3 of the male members would lose their membership. It will never be passed. Will you be committing suicide? Will you be committing suicide? Obviously you will not. So what is the solution? Increase the size of our Lok Sabha, strength of our Lok Sabha. Make sure that male, the present 550 will remain 550 and add 1/3 more to it and give it as reservation for women. That is the only solution. Please remember, this question can be asked this year in your polity governance paper. Women reservation. The only solution is, have either double member constituencies which cannot work, or delimitation of constituencies. At present we have only 550. The population is 1.3 billion. So that means, per constituency the population is almost 2 million, more than 2 million. So make sure that you have at least one member of parliament for 1 million population. Increase the number of constituencies and reserve those constituencies for women. Then nobody will object to it. In that manner only you can implement 33% reservations for women. Otherwise the constitutional amendment will never be passed. And then a glass ceiling in the private sector also. How can you break this glass ceiling in the private sector? When more opportunities are provided for women to join the private sector at lower stages, lower levels, automatically they can reach top levels also. The problem is that there are very less number of women working in the lower and middle levels in our nations. Obviously there will be less number of people at the top level also. So what you have to do is that you have to ensure that the quantity is more, so that the quality can also be improved at the top. That is the only way you can increase. And how can the quantity can be increased? Only by providing better education facilities for women. And reservations cannot be the solution. In the private sector you cannot provide reservations. As I said, that the moment you talk about reservations, they will run away. And then how to prevent atrocities? As I said, that there must be strict implementation of law. There must be proactive policing, community policing. This is what you have to write for this case study. As I said, whatever we have discussed here can be asked as a question in any of the 4 papers of your general studies. And the similar question was asked 2 years back in your economy, gender budgeting. Gender budgeting related to women only. There again you have to write similar questions, similar answer. Depending on the question, you have to change the answer, some of the contents of the answer, but the core of the answer will remain the same. You can include gender budgeting also here. So that, in fact, as part of another solutions, you can include gender budgeting. So that the money allocated for women will be spent only on welfare schemes meant for women. For example, NREGA, the government is spending, say, 60,000 crores of rupees. This is what the government has said this year they will be spending on NREGA. And women workforce is around 25% in rural areas, part of NREGA. So out of 65,000, 25%, 15,000 should be spent only on paying as wages to women workers. That is what is called gender budgeting. You have to give these kind of solutions. Next question. You are working as HR manager in a private company. You are known for your efficiency and honesty. Recently, a close friend of yours who has lost both his parents and looking for a job after completing his education from a charity college approaches you to provide him a job in your company. He has required qualifications to fill a job post for which the company has recently published an advertisement. But he wants you to choose him over others, even if there are more qualified persons, so has to help him overcome his difficulties in life. But many people have applied for this job that are even more qualified. Your friend is reeling under extreme poverty and this job can change his life for better. He has come to you because you are the only person whom he knows in the city and whom he trusts to help him in the hour of need. He also reminds you gently and politely that the promise you made him few years ago to help him find a job. Is it ethical to recruit your friend for the job bypassing other qualified aspirants? Is your friend justified in seeking favors from you, knowing that he will be snatching the job from a more qualified person than him? Justify your answer. So, the case study here is that, you are the HR manager of a private company. As the HR manager, you have the right, you have the powers to recruit people. So, your company had come out with an advertisement for a position in your organization. Many people have applied. And suddenly your friend, one of your friends from the past, he also has applied for this position. He had come and has said that, I have applied for this position, you must make sure that I will get this job. He is very poor and he needs this job very badly also. Otherwise, it becomes difficult for him to carry on with his normal life also. And you also made a promise to him some time back that you will help him finding a job. And he says that you must, now help him in this hour of need. And the problem here is that there are many other people who are more talented, more qualified than your friend, for this position, who have applied. What will you do? So what is the ethical dilemma that you are facing here? What is the ethical dilemma you are facing here? Loyalty to your friend. That is what you call personal ethics. Personal ethics versus the interests of our nation. Versus the interests of our nation, what we call professional ethics. The interests of our nation, what we call it as professional ethics. Personal ethics versus professional ethics. This is what the dilemma that you will be facing. If you help your friend, it means that your friend, it means that you are loyal to your friend, and it means that in your personal relationships, people can rely upon you whenever they face any kind of problems. But what your action will be? Your action will be what? Causing harm to the interests of our nation. So what are your options? So two options here. Either help your friend or ignore your friend. What is the merit and demerit? What is the merit and demerit? If you are helping the friend, it shows your personal ethics. Friendship is all about coming to the rescue of other person when the other person is in trouble. And what is the demerit here? You have caused harm to the interests of our nation. Why? Because for the simple reason that there are other people who are more qualified than you, than your friend. On the other hand, if you ignore the request of your friend, what is the merit? If you ignore the interest of request of your friend, what is the merit? You have ensured the integrity. You have protected the interests of your organization. But you have proved to the rest of the world that you cannot be a person to be relied upon. It results in what is called a trust deficit. Trust deficit. Nobody will be trusting you after this. So this is what is called a win-loss situation. You have to come up with a solution which is called win-win situation. What is called a win-win situation? What is the win-win situation that we are talking about here? What is the win-win situation that we are talking about here? So, first and foremost, what will you do? You will select the best qualified person for this job. Best qualified person. Why? Because you cannot compromise with organizational interests. Second, you know, you must also take care of your friend also. Personal ethics also important. So what will you do? You will promise your friend that you will help him in getting the job in other organizations. You will help him in getting the job in other organizations until he finds a suitable job. Till he finds a suitable job, you will take care of all his needs. You see that? You will take care of all his needs. His food, boarding, lodging and everything. He will take care of all his needs. That is what you will promise your friend. And then, you will all use your contacts with others in other organizations to find a better job for him than what your organization is offering. To find a better job than what your organization is offering him, so that he would not feel deceived also. This is what is called win-win situation. This is what you have to write for this question. Next, we have to answer the two questions that were raised here. Is it ethical to recruit your friend to the job by bypassing other qualified aspirants? Definitely not. You will not do it. Second, is your friend justified in seeking favors from you, knowing that he will be snatching job from more qualified persons than him? Is it ethical on the part of your friend? Yes, it is ethical, because for him it is a question of life and death. Can he be thinking about others when he is not in a position to survive? It is perfectly justified on his part to seek his job. And you also have made a promise to him 2 years back that he will always help him in finding the job also. That is the reason why he had come to you. It is ethical on his part to ask for a job because of what we call personal ethics. The personal relation between the people are based on what we call mutual trust and confidence. That is the reason why you promised him, and that is the reason why he had come to you seeking for job. It does not really matter whether less qualified or more qualified people are there. He says that you have promised me and you give me the job, but you cannot give the job to him. It is unethical, because you have to think about your organization also. And that is the reason why you have come out with what is this called win-win solution. So this is what you have to write for all these questions, right? As I said, when we have the coming tests, there I will be giving questions that will be relevant for this year's examination, both the session A as well as case studies. I will be giving more questions, right? Yeah. And for those who are in the class, I think on Monday also you have a test, case studies. The test can be at 11 o'clock, 11 to 12:30. At 12:30 we can have the discussion of case studies on Monday, right?